So while the whole world was watching last night's GOP debate, down in Washington, they were doing what they do best, looting from our grandchildren. Congress will be voting on a $1 trillion omnibus spending bill this Friday, a couple days from now. And I got to tell you something, this is an establishment smash and grab. They're taking everything. Joining me now, distinguished visiting fellow at the Heritage Foundation, Steve Moore, Fiscal Times columnist Liz Peek, and back with us is James Rickards. Steve Moore, I got to go with you first. You know, throughout the day, 2,200 pages, who's going to read that? So throughout the day, snippets of it come out. And every time I see a snippet, I'm like, oh, my God. Oh, my God. It's just, these guys are tone deaf, or they kind of remind me of pirates splitting up the loot. This is nuts.
It's not just nuts economically, and clearly the fiscal effect of this is highly negative. I mean, we have an $18 trillion national debt. We're running $500 billion to $1 trillion deficits a year. Remember, the seeds of this were sown about a month or so ago, Charles, when they made that budget deal. Remember, that raised the debt ceiling, got rid of the budget caps, and then got rid of sequester. And now it's just a jailbreak. It's a fiscal jailbreak that's going on right now in Washington. Now, I'll just say, since this is a week before Christmas, I'll say one good thing about this bill. It's about the only good thing in this bill, which is it does contain language that will finally end the 40-year moratorium on exporting oil. That's a big deal for the economy. I think that alone could raise oil and gas output in this country by $50 billion a year. That's a big number.
That is a big number. So is the 800 and 900 billion in the deficit.
Right.
That, you know, Liz.
The problem with the oil import agreement, which
export
agreement, which is really extremely important and way overdue, is that they traded it for continued support for renewables. And at some point, Republicans and Democrats have to stand up and say these things are either economic and have to survive on their own, or this is not the path we need to take. Well, now they've got a 5-year window, I think, an extension, so they're going to keep going and keep going. Exactly. Those solar stocks absolutely went right through the roof, by the way. They were hot since the Paris Accord. Maybe this is already tipped off. But, you know, again, though, Jim, it's one of these things where you saw on stage last night where there was one common theme, a reflection of the anger of the American public, a reflection of the disappointment that the people in Washington, D.C., the establishment have let us down over and over again, and yet they're going to follow all of this up, both sides of the aisle, and loot the Treasury.
Well, the elites don't pay attention to everyday Americans. Here's the thing, Charles. Let's connect the dots between the Fed and the Congress. This is the beginning of helicopter money. People don't understand the difference between quantitative easing and helicopter money. In QE, you print the money and you give it to the banks. But nobody wants to borrow, nobody wants to lend. Helicopter money, you combine fiscal and monetary policy. So the Congress runs a deficit. They spend the money on whatever they want. That's what we're seeing. The Treasury borrows the difference, and then the Fed buys the bonds. So you still have money printing. It's just that now it goes straight to favored interests as opposed to sitting in the bank. This Adair Turner, George Soros, the Center for New Economic Thinking, they're the thought leaders on this. But you're going to see this all over the world because QE doesn't work. Helicopter money does work. You're going to see more.
Is it an artificial? Are you saying is there anything legitimate about it then? Could you say, hey, nothing? Well, isn't this just a form of crony capitalism?
Well, no. Well, yes, but they want to. That's a side benefit. What they want is inflation. For 7 years, they haven't been able to get it through QE. Basically, the research is in the QE doesn't work. You can get inflation if you spend enough money and run big enough deficits. So they're saying we need inflation to basically make the debt go away. You can't pay $14 trillion, but you could pay half the real value. Yeah. So you got to spend.
Well, I will tell the audience here some good news. That restaurant calorie count thing, they're going to get rid of that, so that's good. All right.